See, this I got somebody in the back named John, and they're showing their face. I don't know who you are, but you're showing your face. Props. I'm about to let you up. John, welcome to the stream.
Kia ora. Hello, how are you? I butt dialed.
Say that again.
I think I might have butt dialed you. I'm sorry.
I don't know. I mean, that would probably be pretty difficult to do. You'd have to hit on a link in a chat. Much love, John. Do you have a name that you go by that we would recognize you from in chat, or?
No, this is, I just was scrolling along YouTube and this popped up. So,
interesting. So you found me on your homepage. I didn't realize that my channel would be getting a recommended to anybody. Is that how you found me? Just through your homepage?
Yeah,
you were not subscribed?
Yeah. You're in the algorithm, man.
All right, John. Well, let's talk. I don't know how much of my show have you heard this morning?
Nothing. Well, I heard you talking about ocular optics and as above, so below, something like that.
All right, John. Well, my audience is welcoming you, so welcome.
Hello.
So let's have a convo, dude. What's on your mind?
Well, I'm more interested in what's on your mind, man. You seem pretty angry at graphics, but you're talking about you're wanting discourse, but you're saying, fuck you, I'm going to block you, man. That's what I walked in on. So maybe I can tone the tempo down and say hello. And we're talking about, what were you talking about? How our eyes can't perceive things correctly?
How eyes can. No, I'm talking about, let's just say objective reality and the conversation towards how can one approach understanding objective reality. And John, we could even ask the question, is there an objective reality? Some could say that there is no objective reality, that we're each experiencing this realm individually, and that it really is sort of solipsistic. You know, I would argue that there is an objective reality that we do share in, but we can start there. You know, what are your thoughts?
That sounds like a subjective opinion, but I think that, to be fair, what they're sort of realizing, I guess, that as the observer, we are part of the equation. And so as much as we'd like to separate ourselves, we kind of can't, in a way. But we create tools, we create microscopes, we create, telescopes in order to see better, see more that our eyes can't see. And yeah, I guess that, have you heard of the double slit experiment?
Yes, I have. I just want to know, my audience thinks that we look alike. Let's test this out. We both are wearing a beanie. Mine's a little crooked right now, a little bit in a more darker room. We both have facial hair. You appear to have longer hair than me.
I do.
We do resemble each other. Although some seem to think I have the better beanie. But
you probably do. I mean, you got a panel and stuff. There you go. Here we are talking about objective, subjective reality, but soon we turned on to toques.
And P.S. My name is also John. So the similarities run deep here.
They do, except I think you're cameras and stuff. Go on, let's talk some more about. I like this. This is good discourse. How many people are on this, anyways? How does this thing work?
Say that again, John.
How many people are watching or whatever?
There's currently 74. We'll probably get 600 or 700 views when this is done. 3-hour show. That's the numbers. Again, like somebody said that I'm surprised that my show is being recommended in the on your homepage. Hey, but I'll take it, YouTube.
Yeah, we're fun.
You mentioned the double slit experiment, John. Some
Yeah.
people are calling this the double John experiment because we're both named John. So,
Yeah, it just depends
um,
on what side you look at it from.
yeah. So, and I know, John, you have a little bit of a delay here. Where are you coming at us from? Where are you located, sir?
I'm in the beautiful country of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
You're from New Zealand. I have a number of New Zealand listeners. You're likely 16 hours ahead of me. At least that's what they tell me. So I guess it's quite early in the morning for you. What is it? Maybe
No, it's
4 in the morning. What time is it for you?
it's 10 to 12, so almost midnight.
10 to 12.
Yeah,
Oh, right. Yeah, my math is way off there. Gotcha.
that's all
So
right.
it's almost 12 for you. It's
Hey.
8 for me. So that's that's 16 hours. 16 hours is right.
So what does your channel do? Like, what do you talk about and stuff? It sounds like pretty groovy topics, if you know what I mean. So
Audience, why don't you let John in on what this channel's about? Heidi, can you let John in on what this channel's about? I'll let my audience explain that to you. But you mentioned the double slit experiment, and I know the reference. Now, I'm not quite sure the double slit experiment is everything it's been presented to us. I understand what it is. It basically is used in discourse to show certain things. Some people will say the effect of consciousness on this particle physics reality that they present
yeah,
to us, that our consciousness influences. Other people will look at it to say that it shows that light can be expressed not only as a waveform but a particle, which I think is rather convenient, and I don't buy it. I think light is most likely not a particle. I think the photon and the photons of light, and light is explained by what they call the standard model of science, doesn't hold up. To me, light is a wave. Electromagnetics is probably the only force in this realm, at least demonstrably. I don't really buy into the double slit experiment much, but I do appreciate it as a
maybe
tool
the
for
particulars.
discourse.
Yeah, maybe the particulars, but just the general sort of thought process behind it, I guess, is the main part, and how we can be an actual part of the equation. And yeah, I don't know. Have you heard of? I guess particles can also act as waves, right? And it's just our way of conceptualizing it, I guess, and writing it down using the language of physics. But I'm not good at the particulars. I'm just good at the concepts, maybe. But yeah, have you heard of like quasi crystals and shit like that?
Explain.
So just just like you might have a frame of a cube, right? Like just the frame of it, and you hold it in the light, and it projects a two-dimensional shadow on the ground. That is a way in order for us to conceptualize a 3D object in a two-dimensional plane, right? And physicists, in all their infinite wisdom and computer power and whatnot, have figured out how to do it with fourth dimensional, eighth dimensional, 16th dimensional, in order to project it onto into a computer model that we can conceptualize. And what they're finding is that I guess they're trying to figure it out with string theory and all this. They're still, we're still miles behind. But what they're kind of coming to is that the reality is made up of tetrahedrons, or at the Planck size, like the tiniest little, tiniest size that you can think of. And that these tetrahedrons can only interact or can have positions in 3 or so different ways. I can't remember the particulars. Like I said, I'm not good with them, but the more research that they're doing, I think it's called the emergence theory or something. And the more research they're doing on it, the more they're finding that what dictates the states that these shapes or whatever are in is most likely coming down to consciousness, which opens up a whole load of more questions and everything else.
So here's what I'll say. I could agree with or I can resonate with the end result there, that likely this reality, the overarching reality, is consciousness, and the physical world that we perceive is a result of consciousness. But the method towards that you presented, I could probably argue against, in terms of the standard model of particle physics and reality that's presented to us through popular science, when we talks about things like subatomic particles, the basic construct of particles. So although I could resonate with the conclusion of consciousness, the course and method I could probably argue against. Yeah.
I have no idea how they do it or what they do, but they're far more qualified than I. And
okay, see what you just said there, though. But they're not. Who says they're more qualified than you? Their degree, their education, their position in society.
And our
what you're displaying is a tendency for one to defer their authority, to cede their critical thought, their, what I think is their divine ability for logic and reasoning, to an authority figure, to say, oh, you know, that's really complex, and there's really, really smart people who study this and they dedicate their lives to, and they have it figured out. And I think that's a deception.
They're trying to figure it out, you know, using the collective knowledge of other people that have used their lives and dedicated their lives to do it. And why would they dedicate their lives to something that's, I guess, unfruitful? Even if they get something wrong, they can still add that to the lexicon and say, well, that's not the way to do it. And so it's,
well, you say, why? Are you familiar with logic, the concept of logic?
Maybe not the particulars. Like I said, I'm not very good, but you know,
yeah.
If somebody brooms a factory floor, right, and they do it for 30 years every day, yeah, like in between all the aisles, up and down, H to Z, B to O, whatever it is, and then you step in on the first day and want to broom that factory floor, who do you think is going to be better at it?
Well, again, I mean, I'm going to point you to
more, you know, like, and that's all physicists do. Don't get me wrong, there is doctrine and there is ideology and there is all the bullshit that goes along with being human and having a fucking university and ideology behind you, but there are people that dedicate their lives, and I'm not one of them. Fuck, I just smoke doobs and watch buzzy videos, but
right. So I'm trying my best, and my audience, am I doing a good job to like not railroad him, to actually discourse with him? What I would just do, John, what I would just do is I would point you to the concept of logical fallacies, because to me, the only method to approach a degree of objectivity in this realm is to use logic. There's principles of logic. If you study logic, you'll learn of logical fallacies. I'll just point you to there, because what you're doing is a classic logical fallacy when you defer to an authority. It's one of the primary logical fallacies, is an appeal to authority, because that's no proof, because I'll just present it like this. People can deceive, people can be deceived, people can be wrong. Because an authority says something, it's no degree of truth. And in a world of deception, I would say it's probably, Heidi says I'm in balance. Thanks, Heidi, because a lot of my chat thinks you were sent here as subterfuge. I'm not necessarily sure. I have no proof of that, guys. He could have just showed up here, and we welcome him. But I'm here to engage in discourse, and I have an open panel.
Minky's got something to say. Minky, what do you reckon? Can you see it? What do you reckon, Minky? There you go.
And now we're going to go to your dog. Is that a dog? It's hard to see.
Hey, Sailor, you're on TV. Sorry. Logic of fallacies and authority. I fully believe that you shouldn't believe everything that you hear from an authority figure or a authoritative source, but you know, I think using critical thinking and past logic and past people's work, you can deduce what you want.
All right.
And
Well, let's talk about the last 3 years. You're in New Zealand. We were presented with, what were called a global pandemic, in which there was a lot of authority figures who were basically giving us advice, recommendations, and their understanding on the situation.
sure.
Did you defer to authority figures during this last 3 years because they know better? How did you treat the authority figures?
No, I was very skeptical. I was very like, oh, if we were one of the first countries to go into lockdown and, be told to stay at home. And no, it wasn't pleasant, or wasn't a believable thing to go through. There was a lot of lies from the top down. But to be fair, I think that they're two different species that we're talking about right now,
Well, what
if
are
we're
we
talking
talking about? Because I thought we were talking about authority figures. I thought we were talking about truth, knowledge. So I asked you if you believe the authority figures of the last 3 years, and you said no. But
well, I
yet
guess
you're will.
okay.
Hold on. We're having discourse, right? And I know there's a delay. So
Right.
you're unwilling to cede your God-given ability for critical thought, logic, and reasoning to the authority figures with that subject. But when it comes to the subject of particle physics, when it comes to the subject of the nature of this realm, you're all too willing to cede your authority to others. So I'm
Well,
pointing out an incongruity. There's an incongruity in your thought that I'm pointing out.
Yeah, I think you've picked up on it. I think you've picked up on it right. There's an incongruity of thought. There's a imbalance that we're talking about. One is 3 years and not very little knowledge and paperwork and studies behind it, and the other is like, you could say, since the dawn of science, that we've been trying to understand physics and everything else, and there's a plethora of information and wealth of knowledge behind it. So they're two different things that I don't think that, I guess if you break it down, what's the difference? It could be time and experience, like this broomer of the factory, and I don't think that's a fallacy in logic. I think that that's a logical infallacy.
Bizwoofer, you there?
Yeah, man. How's it going? Good morning.
Hey, morning to you, Bizwoofer. Bizwoofer, meet our friend John here, our new friend John. John, this is Bizwoofer.
What's up, John? How's it going? Been listening to what you have to say. Very well thought out stuff, man. I'm just enjoying the show. Enjoying what you guys are dishing. Right
on, Biz. So, Biz, John to me is evidencing one of the issues that I see in this culture is the inability for logical thought processes.
Oh, absolutely.
The inability to think in any given way. I see a strong delusion and confusion in his words. It's upsetting for me. I'm trying my hardest not to project all of society's ills onto John. I'm assuming he's not. I'm assuming he's not intentionally here to propagate the current discourse. However, part of me is not sure. But John, I'm going to ask you to try to not interrupt me as I'm speaking. Please do your best. And again, Bizwoofer, not only evidencing an inability for logic, but also an inability to restrain oneself, an inability for self-control, which is common. It's not just you, John. It's even again as you're interrupting me, knowing that there's a delay, knowing right as you're doing it, as I'm pointing out that you're interrupting me as I'm. See, again, it's an inability for self-control, self-mastery. They've engineered a society of people who act through their emotions, and you're basically just running a program, John. You're likely not aware of it. Bizwoofer, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm glad you bring it up because it comes back to the old that, you talk about people not being able to think through or not being logical about things. And, it comes back. I like to look for the common denominator in things. That's sort of like I always fall back on that because, I'm not always good with the critical thinking myself. I know there's so much information out there, it's hard to process. So because of that, I always look for the common denominators, the underlying principle that really connects the dots. And, it all comes back to that old adage we've heard time and time again, that knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. And if I were to sit across somebody on a chess table and they knew what the rook or they knew what the bishop does, and I had no idea what moves the bishop could make or what moves the knight could make, and my opponent did, don't you think that would give them a pretty significant advantage over me at the chess table? Absolutely. It absolutely would. So, it's important that we understand that, we've been fed McDonald's kind of fast food information our whole lives. We go to the public schools, we get the public textbook information, we get whatever's kind of hand-me-down information that we're left with in these sort of institutions, and they call them institutions because they institute ideas. They're there to institute sort of concept and ideas, not for your benefit necessarily, but for somebody else's, vision for what society should be, right? So, it does come back to that. And I don't want to I know we sort of laugh and joke about Alex Jones and InfoWars, but it really is an information war, I think that's a pretty important principle when trying to decipher these things, this sort of endless buffet of information that's at our fingertips, because I know it's very difficult to navigate. But
well, that's the thing, Bizwoofer. And Bizwoofer, I'm gonna put you on the shelf. Hang in if you want. I want to discourse with John. I want to discourse with John here, and I want to respond to what you just said here. And I do think the information overload is part of it, because they present us with so much information, and then you get the thought expressed by our new friend John here, where you say, "Hey, look, there's so much to know, and there's experts in these particular fields. So because there's so much to know, and little old me can never understand these things, that we just defer our understandings to the so-called experts." And I think that's part of the deception. John, what are your thoughts when I say here, and I say you evidence a lack of self-control and you evidence a lack of logic? How would you respond to that?
Well, I would like to just rewind a quick second. And are we talking about my lack of control or my lack of logic, or are we talking about the lack of logic of millions of people who do studies and dedicate their lives? And if we take it back to basics, right? If somebody's building a house, they're not going to go and sit down and learn how to build a house, go out and build a house, and it doesn't work. What do you think they're going to do? Keep teaching that way of building the house? No, they're going to teach you the right way to build a house, and then good people come along and they build something more. And if you're so worried about institutions and them disseminating false information, then go join them and release your own information like you're doing now, but have that wealth of knowledge behind you as well to build on, to grow from. I think we're all
so
human.
let's
Yes, I do have a lack of self-control. I'll answer that, and I do. You're damn straight about that, Skippy.
Well, at least you're aware of it. Let's kind of back up. Let's frame this conversation. All right. Now, let's find what we disagree with, because I'm not quite sure. Nope, we lost John. Oh wait, hold on. Is this him?
Oh, we swapped over there. Look at that.
Oh, here he is. Looks like you're having an intermittency, but you're back.
Hey.
Okay, so you and I could agree that this reality is likely consciousness, but it seems as though we disagree on the nature of the physical form. You likely think you live on a spinning globe that's orbiting a sun. If you listen to me at all this morning, you probably can realize that I do not. What are your thoughts there? Am I framing that correctly?
Well, if I may, can we both agree that we both don't know? I think if we start at that point, then we can both try to find it out and figure it out together, right? I don't think nobody's right if everyone's wrong.
No, I disagree with your premise, because you can know, you might not be able to know a true thing, but you can identify a lie. So if I can identify a lie, then I know that's not a true thing. Although I may not be able to grasp it. It's not semantics, because they're not synonymous.
This is the definition of
because if you accuse me of something, see about the self-control, John. Are we going to have to work on this first before we proceed?
We're talking about our emotions right now. Or we're going to talk about the world in which we live. All right.
No, we're going to talk about the topic of. We're talking about whether
this case is getting personal, my friend, and I don't want to get personal. All right,
John. I'm going to have to shelf you if you don't stop interrupting me on my own broadcast. You have to understand I'm doing a broadcast here, right?
Oh, there's a lag, and yeah.
I know there is. I know, and we're working through it. What I'm saying to you is, one doesn't need to know the truth to identify a lie. So if you lie to me about something, John, and I know it's a lie, and I can prove it's a lie, I don't have to know what the truth is. If you accused me of stealing the cookie from the cookie jar, and I can prove that I didn't steal the cookie from the cookie jar, I don't have to prove to you who stole the cookie. We may never know who stole the cookie. But if I prove that you lied about me stealing the cookie, I can prove that that was a lie without knowing the truth. Well, it's the same thing for this realm. I don't have to know what this realm is to know what it's not. And I know that it's objectively not a spinning globe orbiting a sun. Now we can go from there, John, and have that conversation if you'd like to.
Well, and it's the same token, it's two sides of the coin you're talking about. This is what semantics is, my friend. And whether it's heads or tails, I'd rather use my heads rather than listen to tails.
Okay, well, can you use your own logic, your own discernment to try to objectively or to approach objectivity in this realm?
Pretend it's opposite day and said what you just said before. The burden on proof is on you, and there's millions of people trying to.
Is it? The burden's on proof of me to do what?
Depends on who wants who to prove. Come on now.
Let me ask you, John. When somebody told you live on a globe that's orbiting a sun, is that not a claim?
I wouldn't believe it if it's coming from one person drunk at a bar.
You didn't answer my question, John. You're not answering my question, and my audience is probably right, because they were saying that you were. John, I'm asking you a question.
Depends who it's coming from. Where's your answer, sir?
It's coming from what's so-called science. There's a claim, right? If somebody says to you, you live somewhere in a model, is that not a claim? Yes or no?
I guess who's making the claim? If it's
you're not answering. See, it's interesting that you choose not to answer my question.
Hey, you're showing a real lack of self-control, my friend. Please.
I'm showing a lack of self-control. No, you refuse to answer a simple question. I'm asking you: when someone tells you you live on a spinning ball orbiting a gaseous body existing in space, I'm asking you if that is not a claim. Yes or no?
You're saying someone? One person?
You still refuse to answer my question. What does it matter if it's a person or a group of people, or if it's an organization or one person? Does that really matter whether or not it's a claim?
Of course it matters. Is it credible? It's credibility. Come on now.
Okay. So is a claim credible when it's antithetical to all objective, demonstrable, applied physical science? Where's the credibility?
Sorry, you broke up there for a second. What was that sentence again? Sorry, you can't just throw a bunch of big words. My internet's not the best. Can you repeat that? Sorry.
John, we're going to take 10 seconds. We're going to do a breathing exercise, okay? We're going to take 10 seconds.
Could you just repeat that sentence that you said?
I will after we do the breathing exercise. We're going to breathe in.
Yes.
and then out. We're going to breathe in and then breathe out. All right. Now.
You calm?
Now, John, we're going to reset. We're going to talk about logic. If somebody claims, if a person or organization or an entity makes a claim, right? Who has the burden? Who has the burden to prove the claim or to disprove it? So if I claim you did something, John, shouldn't it be my burden to prove it? The burden's not on you to disprove it. If I claim that John stole the cookie, shouldn't I prove it? Or do you have to disprove that you stole the cookie?
Innocent until proven guilty, I guess. I don't know. It depends on what the context is.
Really? It depends. So you're saying you can imagine a context in which a claim is levied against someone that the opposition has to then disprove?
Yeah, if it's some random dude claiming some shit.
Really, John, I wouldn't want to be in a court of law with you. I wouldn't want you to be my juror. Because if I go to court and somebody's claiming I did something and you're part of the jury, I guess I'm in trouble, dude. Because you think that I have to prove that I didn't do it. But the reality is the one who makes the claim has the burden to prove it. That's what you seem to be missing here. I don't know how far you and I can go if you're believing that the person making the claim is under no obligation to prove it. And you're actually arguing the opposite.
Some context, man. Like, shit.
There's no context needs to be made. We're talking about logic. Because
context,
if you think that the
involved, man. Fuck. Every human is different.
Every human is different.
Some are credible, some aren't. Some are trustworthy, some aren't. Like you're
right. And you and I can agree on it. And because of that, we need certain foundational principles to try to get to the truth.
And
man, you can't stop cutting. Okay, let's talk about physics and science. Let's talk about it. I would love it. Guys, don't you love how they're starting to send people at me? But go ahead, John. Let's keep talking, John. Let's keep talking.
Yeah.
Let's talk about physics. Let's talk about physics and science. I would love to.
You're so trustworthy.
John, like, I get it. Nobody can hear you when you interrupt me. John, nobody can hear you when you interrupt me. You understand that, right? When you interrupt me, nobody could hear you. It's just words.
Sorry, there's two people. Same with you, my friend. See?
John, we're doing a broadcast. When you interrupt me, dude.
Hey, this is my first broadcast. Please be kind.
All right. We're doing our best here, sir. You want to talk about science? I would love to talk to you about science, but I'm trying to talk to you about logic first.
Okay.
We can talk about science if you want to.
Okay, what about logic? Let's talk about logic.
All right. So I'm waiting for you to concede to this point, which you seemed unwilling so far.
Do you think every point you have needs to be conceded to? Because that is not going to get you anywhere.
Well, because we're not going to have a fruitful conversation unless you can concede that the burden of proof is on the one making the claim.
Hey, that's like you.
John, can we? How do
you say that I should concede to anything you say? All right, you don't have that power.
No, John, I'm not. I'm asking you on this one point to acknowledge that the burden of proof is on the ones making the claim to prove the claim. If you have a different idea, then we should talk about that. You can maybe try to convince me how the burden is on the opposition to prove the opposite and tell me how that makes sense. Let's talk about that before we talk about science. Maybe you could convince me that fundamental of logic is wrong somehow.
Okay, so you have a guilty witness, correct? What do you do to try and get the truth out of this witness or the truth out of a situation? You call in experts, no? If there's a car crash, you'd call in a car crash expert so that he could measure the bitch marks burns on the asphalt. You would call in a Renault or whatever car it is, Pontiac specialist to give you the safety ratings on a high speed collision, right? What speed, how fast it was going, was it icy outside, was this happening? You call in experts, correct?
John, what does that have to do with the question of burden of proof? You call in the experts because the prosecution has the burden of proving the guilt. You said a thing that shows your look. If you keep interrupting me, I'm going to have to drop you. We're going to drop the discourse, John. We can't keep interrupting each other if we're going to do this. Now, I'm going to show you why you are unable to think because you're illogical because you started the conversation. John, are you going to keep interrupting me, dude? How much are they paying you, John? Because I'm really starting to agree with my audience, dude. Because you're not engaging in discourse. Now we're going to keep trying. Ready? Now, I'm going to point out to you how you were illogical. You started off your statement by saying, if you have a guilty witness, meaning to say, if you have a guilty, let's say, defendant, you're assuming the guilt of the defendant. No, the process. We're going through this process to either prove guilt or innocence. You understand?
Okay.
You started off by saying if you have a guilty defendant. That's not logical. You say if you have a defendant, how do you prove either guilt or innocence? But it's really how do you prove guilt and who has the burden? Stop, John. I'm going to give you a chance to talk. You got to stop interrupting me, John. John, you got to stop interrupting me. I'm going to drop you. You're not understanding that this is my show. It's not yours. I'm going to give you your turn, all right? I'm going to give you a turn. Now,
correct.
I'm showing to you that you were begging the question of guilt, just as you begged the question of globe. You assumed guilt, just like you assumed globe. I'm showing to you that it's not that. What you're trying to do is the prosecution has the burden of proving guilt. The defendant has to do nothing. The defendant doesn't have to speak. The defendant can just sit there because the burden is on the one making the claim. You're not conceding this point. So we can't talk about science until we can get by this point. Because if you're going to tell me that the burden is on the defendant to prove their innocence, I don't know how to proceed with you. Go ahead.
So I think we're missing one very important question. Who is the defendant? If you were to say that the accused, right, is the sun, and that it is a gaseous giant at the center of our solar system, who would you call in to prove that it is or it isn't?
No, see, that's an entity. So the point is, the claim is the sun and the gaseous model. That's the claim.
Mm-hmm.
So those making the claim have the burden to prove it.
And they've got papers and thousands of studies and models and measurements and technology built.
John, you're just saying words, but you're not providing any evidence. Now, it seems as though you are at least tacitly conceding that the burden is to prove the claim. So I'm going to assume that your ego is just too big to admit it, but you understand that. And then for the sake of conversation, we can move on to the actual evidence. So I could do that. I'm willing to do that, John.
Okay,
we can move on to the evidence.
If you're just...
John,
can you stop making this like a battle? It's not a debate. I thought it's discourse. It's not a debate, right?
No, it is discourse, John.
We're having a conversation, correct?
Right, but see, one of us is being genuine in the approach, and the other is not. That's the difference, John.
Conceding and who's not conceding,
John,
unless you talk about what I know and what you might know, what I might not know.
No, because we're not just going to throw out a bunch of information and words that have no form. Look, if we don't have structure to the conversation, John.
Hey, listen, it was my turn to speak. It was my turn to speak.
If we don't. John, see, I'm going to show you. I'm going to put you in the back. I'm not getting rid of them. I'm going to put you in the back so you can go on ice, so you can learn a little bit about how we're going to run this, dude. John, all right. If we're going to move forward with the understanding that the burden of proof is on the ones making the claim, then we can start talking about the actual proof and the actual evidence. You just saying numbers and math and scientists and loads of information, that's not evidence. Present some evidence and let's talk about it, all right? Come on back up, Johnny boy. Come on back up, John. It appears like we lost John. I'll put the link back on, see if he wants to come up. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a real-life example of... Right. John has the need to be right, Sovereign Nile. He's not really he's not really interested in discourse. He's not really interested in evidence. John, you have to understand, my New Zealand new friend, all you're doing is appealing to authority. You provided nothing in that conversation. Your whole argument was, there's really smart people who spend a lot of time on this, much smarter than me and you, Z, and they spent much more time on this than me and you, Z. So of course they're going to know more than us. That's why I went to logic with him. That's why I was trying to talk to him about logic, because if he can't understand the basics of thought and logic, where can I go with him?